My name is Eva Whitfield. I'm 26 years old, a second-year corporate associate at a law firm in Charlotte, North Carolina. And exactly 3 years ago, I stood on a stage in front of 600 people and heard my name called for a $150,000 scholarship I didn't even know I'd been nominated for. Growing up in Lansdale, Pennsylvania, I was the daughter who asked too many questions, while my younger sister Marissa was the one who got the good china taken down whenever she walked into a room. I was disowned in every way that mattered for 4 straight years, and in that same stretch of time I built a six-figure legal career out of a public scholarship, two part-time jobs, and a level of stubbornness my mother used to call exhausting. The last time my parents and I were supposed to be in the same city at the same time, they were 40 minutes away eating pastel-frosted cupcakes at my sister's baby shower, while my name echoed through a law school auditorium on a microphone loud enough to reach the parking lot. You'll understand when you have kids of your own that some things matter more than a piece of paper, is what my mother told me 11 days before my law school graduation on a phone call that lasted 90 seconds. If you're watching this on your lunch break, half paying attention while you eat at your desk, or if it's 11 at night and you're lying in bed with the brightness turned all the way down so nobody sees the light under your door, comment below where you're watching from and what time it is right now. I promise you, by the end of this, you'll wish you'd sat down first. Let me take you back to where this actually started, 4 years earlier, in a kitchen that always smelled like burnt coffee and pine sol on Delancey Street. I was 22 in my first year at Vance University School of Law, working nights as a paralegal at a two-partner firm downtown for $14 an hour to cover the rent my scholarship didn't touch. Marissa was 20, living at home, unemployed by choice, and engaged to a man named Colton Reyes, whose family owned 3 car washes and very little else in the way of savings. My parents, Richard and Denise Whitfield, had always treated the two of us like different species raised under the same roof. Marissa got a used Honda Civic for her 16th birthday, a bow taped crooked on the hood in the driveway. I got a bus pass and a lecture about how some people have to earn things the hard way. When Marissa dropped out of Bucks County Community College after one semester, my mother told her that was fine, that some people just aren't school people and that's okay. When I brought home a B+ in contracts my first semester, my father asked without looking up from his newspaper if I was even trying anymore. Nobody in that house ever said the quiet part out loud, but the arithmetic was obvious to anyone doing it. Marissa was loved for existing. I was tolerated for performing. The binary choice moment came on a Sunday in October, the same week I'd pulled an all-nighter finishing a memo on secured transactions. Colton's family car wash business was underwater, $61,000 in equipment debt on 2 locations that had been losing money for 18 months. A number I knew because I'd glanced at the public UCC filings out of the same habit that would eventually make me decent at my job. Marissa announced at Sunday dinner that the family needed someone to co-sign a new equipment loan to keep the business afloat, and that obviously it should be me, since I was the one with the good credit and the fancy law degree coming. So it's not like it's a big deal for you. I said no. Not a soft no. Not an I'll think about it. A flat, calm no, delivered the way I'd later learned to deliver bad news to clients, without apology attached to it. My father slammed his fork down hard enough to crack the plate underneath it. So that's it, he said. You'd let your sister lose her home over a signature. I told him it wasn't my signature to give away for free, and that if a business couldn't survive without a 22-year-old law student's credit score propping it up, it had bigger problems than mine to solve. Nobody yelled after that. It was worse than yelling. My mother just quietly cleared my plate before I'd finished eating, which in that house was its own kind of sentence, delivered without a single word. The rupture scene happened 6 weeks later, on a Tuesday in early December, when I came home for what I thought was a normal weekend and found that my father had already moved my remaining boxes. Winter clothes, a crate of law books, my late grandmother's sewing machine, out to the garage, stacked neatly against the wall next to the snow tires. We think it's better if you have your own space now that you're building your own life, my mother said, standing in the doorway with her arms crossed, not quite meeting my eyes, the porch light behind her turning her face into a shape I didn't recognize. My father didn't come out of the den at all. I could hear the television laugh track through the wall. I didn't cry in that driveway, and I want to be clear about that. because I know how this kind of story usually goes, the daughter crumbling on the front lawn while the porch light clicks off behind her. That isn't what happened. I stood there for maybe 90 seconds, feeling strangely, almost clinically calm, the way you feel right after a minor car accident when your body hasn't caught up to what your brain already knows. Then I loaded the boxes into my Corolla myself, because nobody offered to help me carry them, and I drove the 51 minutes back to campus with the radio off. The person who became the closest thing I had to family that winter was Professor Lorraine Achebe, who taught my evidence class and who, without ever making a production of it, started leaving her office door open on Thursday nights when she knew I had nowhere else to study late. She never once asked what had happened with my parents. She just said, apropos of nothing, over a cup of burnt vending machine coffee, you know, the people who build things worth having are usually the ones nobody bothered to invest in early. I didn't understand until much later that she quietly started tracking my grades, my paralegal hours, my LSAT retake score, my clerkship application, building a file on me that I wouldn't see the full shape of for 3 more years. Year 1, I lived off financial aid, a $14 an hour paycheck, and a lot of instant ramen from the CVS 2 blocks from my apartment. Year 2, I made law review and started keeping a folder, first a physical binder with a cracked blue spine, then a Google Drive folder titled Simply Documentation, full of every unanswered text I'd sent my parents, every voicemail that never got a call back, every birthday card I mailed Marissa that never got so much as a thank you text. I wasn't collecting it for revenge. I was collecting it because some part of me needed proof for myself that I had kept trying long after it stopped being reasonable to. Year 3, I clerked for a federal judge over the summer and got my first real paycheck. $9,200 for 10 weeks of work, which felt at the time like more money than I'd ever touched. My mother texted me exactly once that entire year. In October, a single line. Saw on Facebook you're doing that judge thing. Good for you, I guess. I didn't respond. I took a screenshot and put it in the folder, dated and labeled, the way I'd learned to label everything by then. The reconnection, when it finally came, arrived exactly the way I'd learned to expect it would. In March of my 3rd year, Marissa's old college roommate, a woman named Priya who'd stayed loosely in touch with me over the years, sent me a screenshot from a Whitfield family group chat I'd been quietly removed from 2 years earlier. Someone had accidentally added her back in during a phone upgrade. In it, my mother had written, Eva's about to graduate law school with some huge scholarship, apparently. If we play this right for the wedding, maybe she covers the deposit for the venue. She basically owes us anyway after everything we did for her growing up. Colton had replied with a laughing emoji and the words, worth a shot, LOL. I read it twice, standing in the stairwell of the law library at nearly midnight, and felt almost nothing, which surprised me more than feeling something would have. I forwarded it to myself, printed a copy, and the following week sat down with a financial advisor named Marcus Delgado, whom Professor Achebe had quietly introduced me to, and asked him one clinical question. If my parents ever tried to claim any legal or financial stake in anything I earned going forward, what exposure did I actually have? None, he told me, after 20 minutes of questions. No joint accounts, no consigned debt, nothing on paper connecting us at all. That single fact, more than anything else, is what let me walk into graduation week calm instead of braced. I found out about the scholarship itself only 4 days before the ceremony, when Professor Achebe called me into her office and told me the Whitcomb Ray's Legal Futures Award, $150,000 covering my remaining tuition, my bar prep costs, and a stipend for my first year of practice, had been awarded based on a nomination packet she'd quietly assembled over 3 years. My paralegal hours, my law review notes, a letter from the federal judge I'd clerked under, and, though she never said this part out loud, portions of the documentation folder I'd once shown her in a low moment and never asked her to forget. Graduation was set for 11 o'clock on a Saturday morning in May. I texted my parents the details on the Monday before, along with 2 reserved seats in the 3rd row. My mother replied that they'd already committed to Marissa's baby shower, which had somehow been scheduled for the exact same morning despite the baby not being due until October. You'll understand when you have kids of your own that some things matter more than a piece of paper, she wrote, and then didn't respond again, not even when I asked, once, gently, if there was any way to move either event by an hour. I walked across that stage at 11:40 that morning with 600 people watching, my heels sinking slightly into the edge of the outdoor stage carpet, the smell of cut grass and cheap floral centerpieces thick in the air. When the dean called my name for the Whitcomb Reyes Award, the applause lasted long enough that I had time to look out at the crowd and register, without much particular emotion, the 2 empty seats reserved under my family's name in the 3rd row. Professor Achebe stood up from where she was seated with the faculty, which technically she wasn't supposed to do. That was the moment the local paper's education reporter, who happened to be there covering the award for an unrelated piece on state scholarship funding, snapped the photo that would run 2 days later with a caption identifying me as the recipient, a photo that Marissa, of all people, would end up seeing shared in a mutual friend's Instagram story before either of my parents ever mentioned it to me directly. The confrontation came 3 weeks later at what my mother called a peace lunch at a diner off Route 309, the same booth by the window we'd sat in 100 times before. My father sat with his jaw tight, arms crossed, while my mother did most of the talking, working her way slowly toward what I already knew was coming. Could I help with $8,000 toward the venue deposit for Marissa's wedding, since I clearly had it now? I didn't raise my voice. I reached into my bag and set the printed screenshot on the table between the ketchup bottle and the sugar packets, the one from the group chat, the line about how I basically owed them. My father's face went through something I'd never seen on him before, a flicker of real, unguarded shame, his eyes dropping to the page and staying there a beat too long before he could stop them. Then it hardened back over, the way it always did, and he said, "So you've been spying on your own family." I told him calmly that being removed from a group chat and then accidentally screenshotted back into it wasn't spying. It was just math. And that the money he was asking for wasn't a family matter. It was a business proposal from the same people who'd once packed my grandmother's sewing machine into a garage. Then I said the one line I'd rehearsed in the car on the way over. "You didn't lose a daughter when I said no to that loan. You lost the only person in this family who was ever going to tell you the truth for free." My mother didn't speak at all. My father paid the bill in silence and left first, the bell over the door ringing behind him a little too loud in the quiet that followed. What happened after wasn't anything I orchestrated, and I want to be honest about that, because I think it's the part people skip. The venue Marissa had put a deposit on canceled their wedding date 3 months later, after Colton's family car wash finally folded under the debt nobody would co-sign. The exact outcome the public filings had predicted 18 months earlier, if anyone had bothered to look. My parents didn't call to tell me. I heard it from Priya, in a text that just said, "Did you hear?" The one person who reached out afterward unprompted was Marissa herself, in a message that read, "I didn't know about the group chat thing until Mom showed it to Dad screaming about you. I'm sorry. I should have said something back then, even just to you." I haven't fully forgiven her, and I'm not going to pretend I have for the sake of a tidy ending, because that wouldn't be honest either. But I left that door open because she was 20 and scared and cornered by the same 2 people who cornered me. And that's a different kind of failure than the one my parents chose, deliberately, for 4 straight years, one Sunday dinner at a time. If there's a thesis to this story, it isn't that success is the best revenge, because I genuinely don't think revenge was ever the point of any of it. It's that the people who are supposed to show up for you will tell you exactly what you're worth to them the moment there's nothing left for them to gain. And the only real defense is refusing to let their absence decide what you build with the years you have left. I built a career, a documentation folder I never actually had to use in court, but needed anyway, and a life that doesn't have room in it for people who only remembered my name once it came with a scholarship attached to it. If this hit close to home, drop a comment and tell me which line got you the most. Subscribe if you want more stories like this one. Share it with the one person who'll understand exactly why, and I'll see you in the next one.